On today's show, there is exactly 1 month between now and the deadline in the trade world of the NBA. And between now and then, the Hawks are definitely in the middle of the frame between Trae Young, Anthony Davis, all kinds of buzz up and down the roster. And we'll get into all of that and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2138 of the Locked On Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday here in early January. And today's podcast brought to by the folks at FanDuel. And before tip-off actually arrives, check out the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during the NBA happy hour every Friday from 6 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So today will be very busy, kind of a grab bag, but there's 1 month between now and the NBA trade deadline. And that is a long time and a short time at the same time, if that makes sense. It's not imminent, but it is looming, and the Hawks are in between games. If you missed it on yesterday's show, episode 2137, I did a full breakdown of the Trae Young flurry of rumors and reporting and all of that on my end and what was out there in the ether. And as of this moment on Tuesday evening, Trae Young is still a member of the Hawks, which is certainly a key thing to point out right now. But it's both very busy and also eerily quiet today after the flurry of reporting that happened yesterday. But on today's podcast, we'll be digging into the latest Trae stuff, Anthony Davis, other trade machinations, roster stuff, how good might the Hawks be the rest of the season, for example. And then also at the end of the podcast, a peek ahead at a big game for the Hawks on Wednesday evening because they're hosting the Pelicans. And if you're a sicko, you probably understand what that means in Hawksland. So we'll begin with Trae Young because we kind of have to. Not quite the flurry, like I said before, that was yesterday on the Trae front, but there was a little bit of extra reporting that came down. And again, I talked about this a lot yesterday. I won't repeat all of that, but it's certainly a fluid situation as of Tuesday evening. Shams Charania of ESPN did a TV hit today that kind of moved the ball forward a little bit on the latest. Of course, Shams was the one yesterday that kind of reported that the two sides, Trae Young and his agent and the Hawks, are working together now on a potential trade. It's no longer cloak and dagger. Like, everyone knows the deal here. It's not a trade request. Just everybody kind of knows what's going on both sides. Shams reiterated all what he reported on Monday, that the two sides are doing that. And then he also just said plainly that the tenure for the Hawks and Trae is, quote, coming to an end. And he noted that it, quote, appears to be in his final days and weeks when it comes to Trae Young with the Hawks. But notably, Shams did pretty plainly note near the end of this discussion that it's not a lock to resolve before the deadline. So I know everyone's assuming that it's just going to be done and he's definitely going to be gone. But I said yesterday, and I'll say it again now, with trades in particular, and even doubly so in season, nothing is a lock to be done until it's done. Like, there is still a chance. It might be a small one, I'll grant that Trae Young is on this roster beyond the deadline. That is not a non-zero possibility. I think Shams acknowledged that today by pointing to the fact that, like, it could be done in the summer still. He also did say that I thought was notable that he is told that, quote, both Trae Young and the Hawks know that he just doesn't fit with the current team anymore, end quote. And then also pointed out that Trae Young's side of things would, if he is traded, like to find a team where he can actually get an extension. That is a very natural and basically the logical wish for any player in this spot. We'll come back to another guy in a second that's related to the Hawks that has the same desire. So that's a very normal thing, not out of the ordinary whatsoever. But that's the latest. There isn't anything massively new on that front today. Everyone just kind of understands that it's Trae and the Hawks working together. And while I think people were just like, hey, this is going to get done any second yesterday, it was never quite that close from what I understand. And I will also say that it could be any day, any hour, but it could not be at the same time, which is always an uncomfortable place to be if you are reporting on a situation like I am. Beyond the Wizards' interest, which was reported on yesterday a lot, I floated some teams on the show last night that were more just speculation teams, not the full reporting of the Wizards that have been out there. But Mike Scotto, friend of the podcast from Hoops Hype, formerly at the Athletic, reported that the Bucks, the Wolves, and the Clippers, quote, have monitored Trae Young's situation, end quote. For one, those are teams that I did mention before on the podcast, also on my Patreon today, because they don't really have long-term point guard options on their roster that are like locked in. And they're all also kind of in varying degrees of trying to win. sooner rather than later. Not like imminently. Minnesota is kind of trying to win the title this year, but Milwaukee and LA are just trying to kind of figure out what's going on in the future. Trae might have some appeal to those teams. I will also say that Minnesota and LA in particular would be much more logical and possible in the summer because of the way that the deals would have to go down. Like Minnesota doesn't want to have salary matching in season once they want to trade Rudy Gobert. And I kind of have a hard time seeing Minnesota doing that in season and kind of revamping their entire team on the fly. LA has James Harden, who might leave at the end of the season, but if he's on the team, you don't really want Trae on the team. They're kind of overlapping. So all that said, plausible, but again, I will note this. The way that Mike wrote that was that it was very soft language. That does not say those teams are definitely going to be interested in Trae Young. Monitoring the situation, it's not like calling and beating down the door for Trae Young, but some teams that are tangentially added to the mix at the very least. That's also a good reminder, something that I probably should have said yesterday, but with a nice round number of 1 month to the deadline, I will also point this out, and I share it a lot on social media this time of year, but even before the drama broke on Monday, I was talking about this over the weekend. With the deadline approaching, it is always a good idea to take the time to actually read how the reports are phrased, both or listen to them if they're set on TV or on a podcast. This is a lost thing. I don't know if it's media literacy or whatever, but part of this is that there's the Twitter handles like NBA Central that kind of repackages stuff irresponsibly a lot of the times, bad aggregation. Go back to the original source and actually see how stuff is phrased and written. You can often glean a lot about a report by not just taking the top line information, but actually parsing what is written and said. Also, try to figure out where the information is coming from. And I'll do that for you on some stuff about the Hawks. But like, why is this being reported? Who is it coming from potentially? Whether it's the agent, the team, the player, etc. For example, the Hawks are not really a leaky organization under Ansi Solei's leadership. I know he just started a few months ago, but that's the reputation the Hawks have under Ansi. I'm not saying that they would never leak stuff, because I'm sure they will at some point leak some stuff, but they're known around the league as not a team that's going to be super leaky with information. So the Hawks come up like from Hawks stuff comes up from teams, other teams, comes up from agents, outside sources more than actually inside sources. Last thing I'll say on this, and then we'll get to AD in a second. There were multiple national outlets that did kind of like fake trade posts or stories on Trae Young today. And that's natural. Like, it's the time to do that. I don't love making up fake trades because it's like kind of not productive, but I do understand why. And if you do it responsibly, it can be fun. Like the Wizard stuff in particular, once a team is reported, it's very natural to be like, hey, how would this actually work? And I spent a little time yesterday talking about this on the show, like how a structure might function with the Hawks and the Wizards. But ESPN and the Athletic did those pieces and had some actual reasonable ones. I went through some of the Wizard stuff last night, but for example, one of the four that my friend Sam Vecini wrote at The Athletic was a deal with the Wizards for CJ McCollum, Corey Kispert, and the OKC first-round pick that the Wizards have that is likely to be number 30 overall, like literally last in the first round. It's a first-rounder, kind of in name only, but still a reasonable asset as kind of a sweetener to make the deal happen. I know there was reporting yesterday, and I explained this in detail about Mark Stein's first report about how the Wizards maybe asked for draft capital along with Trae Young. Mark then softened on that. And again, the Wizards asking for it does not mean the Hawks would have to give them that. I think Sam's projection is like a pretty reasonable one of what it would take for a deal to get done. But as many have pointed out on the internet today and yesterday and in reporting, et cetera, the Wizards kind of have a mixed incentive. This was brought up yesterday on the show a little bit when I talked about it, but the Wizards might not want to do the deal right now because they're trying to not win a ton of games this season too. There's this back and forth. Also, we'll get into later on in the podcast. Trae's also not like going to just definitely sit out between now and the deadline, and a month is a long time. So it's kind of this waiting game on all sides, but I thought Sam's projection was pretty reasonable of the type of deal the Hawks might do around Trae. This is not me saying that I'd be rushing to do this trade. I am a little bit higher on Trae in this whole process that everybody else seems to be. I'm not saying that the Hawks should keep him for sure. I think it's natural, and I think it makes some sense to move on from Trae at some point. But I think a lot of the points that I'm seeing, like the Hawks have to do this now, I would not be in a like have to do position if I was the Hawks. That's kind of my overarching take on the situation. But that's not a bad return, is because it clears the books a little bit. Kispert's a reasonable contract. You get a small asset back that's something you can at least do without too much pain. That's where I'll leave it for now. All right. There's more to come on the trade front, including some Anthony Davis roundup stuff, plus a question that I got that was pretty interesting because lost in the middle of all of the Trae Young stuff is the fact that the Hawks are still trying to win basketball games. And it's like, hey, how good might the Hawks be the rest of the season? Because they're not playing well right now, and they haven't been for a while. We'll get into all that and more in just one moment. Fridays are different already during basketball season, and FanDuel's making them even better right now. On Friday nights, before the games actually tip off, FanDuel's giving fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame limited time window where special offers drop inside the FanDuel app before the action even begins. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour also brings something new to the table, whether it's boosts or bonuses or surprises. And it's easy to check out the weekly specials before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. Happy Hour adds a little bit of extra energy to your Friday nights when it comes to basketball without having to overthink it. The timing is absolutely perfect, right before the games and right before the weekend actually begins. And it's Fridays from 6 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And that kind of becomes an appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Plus, FanDuel still has everything you need from pregame lines to live lines, as well as a full suite of offerings beyond basketball as well. They have football, they have baseball, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, MMA, boxing, and so many more sports for you. So before tip-off on Friday nights, check out the FanDuel app, see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every single Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. A little bit of basketball, a little bit of action, and a whole lot of Friday night energy. That's NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Have your health or family needs changed lately? Georgia's got you covered. Georgia Access is our sick marketplace for Georgians to compare, apply, and enroll health insurance plans that offer the best value for their individual needs. Open enrollment is happening now. Visit georgiaaccess.gov today. That's georgiaaccess.gov. Georgia Access, health insurance for Georgia by Georgia. All right, thank you. As always, make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. You want to live the Your Team Everyday mindset and not take it up a little if you prefer to by going ad-free if you want, by going to join the Everydayer Club today. Go to lockedonhawks.supercast.com to learn more. And before you get into some other stuff, there's a little bit more on the trade front. I was going to round this up anyway today. Back in the olden days, 2 days ago, before Trae broke the internet yesterday, there's still some Anthony Davis stuff that's worth parsing and getting out there because it's been a constant topic. Just a little bit less so since the Trae stuff started to fly. For the record, I've heard nothing imminent whatsoever on AD and the Hawks. The intel is all over the place right now. For example, Tim McMahon of ESPN, who's very plugged in Dallas, for example, reported that AD's preference is to stay with the Mavs, but also that he wants a contract extension, which is a big factor. Not anything new that if you're dialed into this, you would know this. But the reality is AD and his agent, which is Rich Paul of Clutch, are focused on getting him an extension, as they should. That's them doing their job. At the same time, if you are the Hawks, and I'm on record about this, I would not want to give AD an extension. That is just pretty much full stop. Maybe if it was like a comical bargain, sure, but that's not what they're trying to get at this point in time. He's already making max money for 2 more years. So an extension would give him, max level money or a lot of money, let's just say, into his mid to late 30s. And that's almost certainly a bad idea for whatever team does it, whether it's Dallas or Atlanta or somebody else. That's not going to be a good contract, I don't think. Mark Stein reported recently that it suggests, this is his wording, that Davis would not simply be dispatched somewhere without a level of collaboration with his camp. And then also he said, there is more than one whisper relayed to us, meaning Mark Stein, in recent days to suggest that Rich Paul, Davis's agent, would be high on Atlanta as a destination for his client if trade talks got serious. And Stein notes that Rich represents Jalen Johnson, which is true. Used to represent Trae Young, not anymore. Keep that in mind. It's already been reported to me and others. I've shared this on the show already, but the Hawks are messaging pretty hard that they're not trying to trade or not looking to trade Zachary Richeche for anything, plus specifically in the AD discussions. And for the record, as kind of a sidebar, I know a lot of fans are frustrated with Richeche. I do understand that because he's not had the best season. That's fair to say. Even with what I'm about to say, it is 100% true and accurate to say that Zach has not had a breakout. He's had kind of a stuck in the mud kind of season. Not a terrible one, but it's reasonable to be disappointed by what's going on with him. I was going to do a deeper dive on Zach this week. Maybe I still will before all the trade stuff boiled over. But my general viewpoint on Zach is that it's unwise to sell low on him right now. Now, that does not mean he's untouchable in a trade, nor should he be. He's not the kind of player that should be untouchable, for the record. But like I've seen, like, yeah, he's not like what you don't want to do is make him a throw in a trade. That seems silly to me. He still has value. I think there is generally a very interesting and talented and useful player in there with Zach. He is, by the way, 20 years old, 20, and declaring that he's a bust, which I see every single day, is like very short-sighted. Like, yeah, there's a world for sure where the Hawks might not be thrilled with that pick. Like right now, I think if you gave the Hawks front office true serum and said, would you do that again? They probably wouldn't. And that's fair. I don't think he's going to be the best player in the class. That means by proxy, that would be a mistake. But there's still a world in which he's like a very, very valuable two-way forward, and everyone wants that player. So all those things can be said at the same time. I will also say this. Is he going to be a traditional number one overall pick? No, as far as like being a star, but I never thought he was going to be. So perhaps it's easier for me to kind of understand the progression through that lens. But if you were comparing him to Cooper Flagg or Victor Wembanyama or Zion Williamson or whatever, that was a mistake of expectations. He was not going to ever be that, and there was no one in that class that was projecting that way. So anyway, that's my little one-off on Zach. I would not be looking to trade him. Again, I would say he would be available in a trade for the right price, but the right price is probably higher for me than it would be for a lot of Hawks fans that I see on the internet. All that's fair to say. Also, for some reason, people don't really seem to believe this part, but the Hawks keep telling me and Mark Stein and everyone else that I talk to that Jalen Johnson and the Pelicans/Bucks pick, are basically untouchable. Now, obviously, if the Thunder want to offer Shea for the Pelicans pick, the Hawks will do that. They won't say that, but like that's why I say virtually untouchable. Nothing is actually untouchable, but I will fall on the floor if the Hawks trade the Pelicans pick or Jalen in the next month. That's what I'll say on that. Lastly, Mike Scott reported that the Hawks are, quote, expected to gauge the trade value of Kristaps Porzingis at the deadline. I've alluded to that before as well. That does not mean the Hawks will trade Porzingis. I think he's already showing how important he is to the Hawks winning right now because he is a player that they can't replicate. His size, his shooting, he's a very, very, very good player when he is playing. But obviously the when he is playing part is the question. He is an expiring contract, though, meaning that he will be a free agent in the summer. And when you are not a title contending team, which the Hawks are not right now, it is frankly what you just absolutely kind of have to do to gauge the market on guys who are not signed long-term. For the Hawks, that's two players. It's Porzingis and Luke Kennard. Obviously, Kennard is not a huge asset, but he's expiring as well. The Hawks would be derelict in their duties to not take calls on Porzingis. Like, could he be back next year? 100% he could be. But could and will are different. He wasn't extended for a reason. The health stuff is real. And he's the kind of guy, if he stays healthy the rest of the season, like I could see the Hawks bringing him back. But they should also take calls on him. So that's kind of where we are right now. No surprise that he would be at least listened to. I'm on record about this, but the only guys I'd be like surprised if they got traded for the Hawks, like actually surprised, like me surprised, shocked. Jalen, Pelicans pick. I'd be surprised by Alexander Walker. He's been really good. He just got here. Dyson is like not untradeable but it's functionally untradeable with the way that the provisions are. When you just sign an extension, you cost more going out than you come. It's this weird thing. He's not going to be traded between now and the deadline. And that might be it. I mean, Richeche, I think, is unlikely to be traded. There are other guys who are unlikely to be traded. Okongwu is probably unlikely to be traded, et cetera, et cetera. But like the only fall on the floor guys, Jalen, Pelicans pick. That's the list. And then Nikhil's kind of nearer that only because he just got here. He's been awesome. So all that said, that's the latest on the trade market. Now, a question came in from Houston that I'll answer in a second. But before I get to that, a little bit kind of a notes segment quickly, because it's a month of the deadline, but also teams are not allowed to sign 10-day contracts, for example. The Hawks are maybe a team that could be logically doing that with their open roster spot. For instance, old pal Tony Bradley was waived on Monday. Could be a guy that I would probably try to call and sign a 10-day contract, for example. But the other thing that I want to make sure that people understand is that the league-wide cut-down date for guaranteed contracts is on Wednesday. Technically, the date's the 10th, but you have to waive guys by the 7th, which is Wednesday, to make sure they're actually off the books. So the Hawks have 3 guys on non-guaranteed contracts. It would have been 4, but in following Dante is now out for the season. And because of that, it was effectively triggered. It's not exactly guaranteed, but effectively it's guaranteed because of the injury that he suffered. It's an automatic trigger. So they could still cut him, but they have to pay him. So that's not really, there's no reason to do that now. 2 of the non-guaranteed guys are absolute locks to not be cut. Moge and Vit Krejci. Those guys are rotation level players making very little money. It'd be crazy to cut them, and the Hawks won't do that. The one guy who actually I think should be a decision, maybe the Hawks don't agree with me, is Keaton Wallace. Keaton is non-guaranteed after he was converted from his 2-way in October. My projection is that the Hawks will not cut him, for the record, but I would say it's an actual decision that they should at least look at. It's not crazy to cut Keaton Wallace, is what I would say, on a non-guaranteed contract. Also, Nikola Juricic is on a guaranteed contract, but it's for the rookie minimum, so it's like $1 million cheaper than the minimum. I bring that up because, and this is something I noted today on Twitter, a lot of the constructions around Trae Young deals, for example, are like 3-for-1 or 4-for-1 deals. Those are usually really hard to do in season. Like for the Wizards, they might have to send 3 guys to the Hawks to do a trade. But Atlanta can actually do those deals because they have a roster situation that allows for that. Most teams can't, but the Hawks have an open roster spot already, and also they have literally 3 guys they could cut who are on full contract right now without really much pain whatsoever. One is Juricic, who I know the Hawks liked enough to draft, but it's a different front office now. I am still guessing he's probably going to be a huge contributor in the future. One is Wallace, who is non-guaranteed. And then Dante, who they're paying, but also is out for the season. So if the Hawks needed to cut any of those 3 guys to make a trade happen, they could and probably would do that. So we just want to note that because the day is literally tomorrow. You'll see a lot of guys on non-guaranteed deals cut tomorrow. The Hawks are probably going to just do nothing, I would imagine, because, like I said, Mo and Vit are locks to be on the roster. I think Keaton will be kept. He's been playing this year. Normally, guys who have been playing in the rotation, at least at times, don't get cut on this day. But it's just one to circle because maybe there'll be a team that cuts somebody else somewhere else that the Hawks want to sign. That's also a thing that could happen in the coming days. So it's kind of a nerd thing, but want to keep an eye on that on Wednesday. All right, in a second, I will answer the question that has to do with how the Hawks might fare the rest of the season. Because look, as much as there's a lot of trades going on, there's a lot of games to be played and a season that still matters for the Hawks. So we'll get into all that and more in just one moment. Let's be real. Managing your finances can be a little bit overwhelming. Between subscriptions that actually just kind of forgot about, or bills that keep going up, or trying to figure out where all our money is actually going to be going each and every month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And honestly, who has time to check all of the transactions and hunt down hidden fees? And that's where Rocket Money comes in to help you. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you take control of your finances. It finds and catches your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps you lower your bills so you actually grow your savings at the same time. And Rocket Money also has saved me money, honestly, finding a few subscriptions and letting me cancel them right and easily in the app, just a few taps of my screen. They also have a game changer with the automatic transaction categorization that lets me see where my money is actually going to be going each and every week and month. You can also set budgets and set goals, get insights that are actually personalized to you. Plus, they have access to real-time alerts for large transactions, bills to pay, and balances that are actually getting low. And Rocket Money, they also let you consolidate your checking, your savings, your loans, and investments into a single dashboard to help you get the clearest picture possible of your finances. And you can let Rocket Money help you right now reach your financial goals and do it faster. And you can join right now at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Again, the place to go is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. One more time, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. This show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, try something that actually can feel like a challenge at times. With PrizePicks, it always feels good to be right. With big football matches every single weekend, elite hoops action every single night, the action almost never slows down, and PrizePicks lets you stay in control. And at PrizePicks, they have the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting, and by letting you build lineups based on your player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started at PrizePicks can be quick and simple as well. The app is really easy to navigate. It makes watching games even more engaging, especially when following individual player performances. There's also flexibility at PrizePicks. Options like Flex Play, where you actually can get paid even if one pick happens to miss. And they have this new early payouts feature that's a game changer for you. If a player starts hot, you can actually cash out if you want to before the game even ends. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to receive $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. The code is Locked On NBA to receive $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, and I got a mailbag question today that I wanted to answer, kind of a framing device in some ways, but it came from Houston, who says, if the Hawks trade Trae Young and don't get much back to help this season, what can we expect for the rest of the year, and can we make the playoffs still? So, some uncertainty here for sure. I have to acknowledge that at the top. But the Hawks, as of Tuesday night, are 17-21 on the year. That is disappointing for sure, full stop. But they're projected to be better than that the rest of the season by some of the more notable systems that are in place. For example, ESPN's BPI has the Hawks at 41-41, which isn't great, but that's better than they've been so far. EPM has the Hawks at 40-42. Again, that's above 500 the rest of the season. So I think the Hawks are still a competitive team that is better than they played recently. Now, it's also fair to say, and I have on this show quite a bit, they have struggled mightily no matter who's been available the last, 6 weeks or so. Now, when Porzingis has been on the court, he's been the one exception. Even last night, he did play on Monday. They were dead even in his minutes. They got killed without him, for example. So he's been the one guy who's kind of been able to transcend this, but it's in a tiny sample size. For the most part, they were bad defensively with or without Trae. Worse with Trae, but also bad without him. Offensively, as I shared last night on the show, the Hawks have the 25th ranked offense in the NBA if you just look at the non-Trae minutes this year. Now, that's better than they've been in previous years without Trae, but it's a question for this season and also a question for the future. If they do move on from Trae, is like they need more firepower on offense. That's a big picture goal, but it's just worth noting for the rest of the season as well. So all that said, it matters what the Hawks would get back for Trae Young. It's hard to know, but for example, if you got McCollum from the Wizards, he's at least a rotation player who would help you on offense because, again, that poor ranking without Trae on offense is real. Now, defensively, they're better without Trae, but they've not been playing great defensively even without him recently. So that's a bit of a question as well. So it's different than just taking Trae off the roster and not replacing him. It's hard to imagine any Trae trade where the Hawks get just nothing back that can help you this year. Like all these constructions, all the fake trades that you see, there's usually at least one player that could be in the Hawks rotation when he comes back. It's just hard to say who that player is. So it's more of a TBD. But one thing I want to note, so number one, the Hawks are better, in my opinion, even if you assume Trae doesn't play, which I wouldn't assume, but if you assume Trae doesn't play, they're still capable of being better than they've been so far, recently in particular, as long as KP stays somewhat healthy and they get some knock-on-wood health elsewhere. Number two is the schedule is a lot easier from now on. Now, this is not quite the halfway point, but the Hawks are 3 games away from the halfway point, so we're almost there, like 45% of the way through the season right now. So far, by winning percentage for opponents, the Hawks have had the second hardest schedule in the Eastern Conference so far. And number 7 overall in the whole league, because most schedules are weighted to the West teams being better than the East teams. So the Hawks are number 2 as far as hardest schedule so far to this point. From here on out, the Hawks have the 3rd easiest remaining schedule in the entire NBA by winning percentage. That's really a big gap, obviously. Now, they still play the Pacers twice, the Wizards twice, the Nets 3 times, the Kings, the Pelicans, the Jazz, et cetera, et cetera. I believe if you go from February 1, so the Hawks are on the West Coast next week. If you cut it off after that, the Hawks, I think, have the easiest schedule in the league for the last 2 months of the year. A lot of good matchups in that point in time. So that's one bright spot. If you're ready for the Hawks to win more games, the schedule should be more friendly by opponents. Also, the situation around the schedule should be easier. Now, it was a topic a lot about a month ago, and I've kind of let it go for a little while. But the Hawks have had a grueling and honestly more challenging schedule than most teams in the league, if not every team in the league, by logistics. So far this year, the Hawks have played more back-to-backs than any team in the league. They played 9 back-to-backs already in their first 38 games. That's a lot of back-to-backs. They've had 4 games where they were at a rest disadvantage. And they have, 4 games with an advantage, 8 games with a disadvantage. So that's obviously way tilted in the wrong direction. From this point forward, it's the exact opposite. The Hawks have the fewest remaining back-to-backs in the whole league. They only have 4. So the first 37 games, they had 9 back-to-backs. In the last 45 games, they have 4 back-to-backs. So that's Not the only thing that matters, but certainly that helps quite a bit. And they have 6 advantages on the schedule, rest-wise, and only 2 disadvantages. So I don't want to overweight that. Like, you still have to win the games and play well, and the Hawks have had some bad moments this year playing down to the competition and all those things. But in a vacuum, taking a half step back, the schedule is pretty darn friendly from this point forward, which does matter, and that's part of why projection systems do like the Hawks to win more games the rest of the way, and I agree with that. Also, this is not anything new, but the Porzingis factor is massive. How many games can he play? How many games will he play? We just don't know. I'll be the first to say, I don't know. I don't love to say I don't know, but when I don't know, I will tell you I don't know, and no one can possibly know the answer to that question. I see people saying all the time that they'll never play. He's back and playing, so we'll see. But crucially, the Hawks have been like 9.5 points better per 100 possessions with KP on the court than off the court. Atlanta has a +6 net rating with KP on the court. It's a small sample size, but they've been good when he's played. Full stop. That really hugely matters. The other thing that is on this question that's like hard to answer is like, how healthy is the rest of the team going to be? Because so far, putting KP to the side, the other 4 guys who are the Hawks' best 4 players, if you take Trae away, take KP away, the next 4 guys on the Hawks roster, Jalen Johnson, Nikhil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, Onyeka Okongwu. They've all played at least 34 out of 38 games. And I think 3 of them have played 37 games out of 38. That's good health. Will that all continue? We'll see. But what comes back for Trae, all that stuff, schedule. Long story short, though, I do believe, even if you just said, okay, Brad, no more Trae the rest of the year, you get nothing else. I still think the Hawks would end up probably in the play-in, but with a good chance to make the playoffs. That's where I would be at this point in time. Now, there's variance in all directions, but I think even without Trae, this is a team quality of like a 500-plus team. And given the schedule the rest of the season, that's a team that can make the play-in and then be a threat to make the playoffs. Are the goals of 50 wins, like I thought they might get to this year, off the table? I wouldn't say off the table, but obviously very unlikely at this point in time. The Hawks get the 50 wins, they have to win at like a 55-plus win pace the rest of the year. Hard to ask them to do that. But I think that, to answer the question very plainly, I expect the team to be competitive, frisky, pretty good, and making the playoffs is like not a lock by any means. Like, it's way lower now. I would have said the Hawks were like 80+% to make the playoffs 3 months ago. Now I would say it's more of a coin flip, but they're still very possible to make the playoffs, even with all of this noise and what's going on, because I was last night on the show, for example, I led with Trae stuff. That's a bigger story than the game was last night. But the Hawks also lost in pretty desolatory fashion last night against Toronto. That matters. These games all matter. And like, last thing we'll do on the podcast today, the Hawks play the Pelicans on Wednesday. That's a double game in some respects because of all of the stuff when it comes to the draft pick and so on. Everyone knows the deal on this, but the Hawks have the better of the Pelicans and the Bucks. So they're rooting against the Pelicans every single night. In fact, as I'm recording this podcast, the Pels are leading in the second half against the Lakers. Not great for the Hawks. But on the bright side, they've lost 7 in a row coming into the day. So even if they win today, they're still okay shape. The Pelicans are not very good, projected to be a bottom 5 team in the league, but they're not the worst team in the league, I don't think. And I've said that a number of times on the podcast. As far as the game is concerned, the Hawks won in New Orleans earlier this year. It's a back-to-back for New Orleans with travel, so that's an advantage for the Hawks. The biggest thing is that Trae is listed as questionable. And candidly, I don't know what to make of that. The Hawks didn't have practice today because they traveled back. They had the day off. So I'm not seeing anybody today in person. People were shocked to have that listing. I was not. I said this last night. I've been given no indication that the Hawks are just going to shut Trae down. Now, he might not play tomorrow. That's very possible. He's questionable, not probable or in. But the notion that I think people have been assuming since yesterday that he'll never play again, I would not make that assumption. If he can play physically, I would not be surprised for him to play. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit awkward, but I'll be in the building tomorrow. We'll figure that out all together at the same time. On the Pelicans front, old friend Sadiq Bey missed the game tonight in in New Orleans against LA for the Pelicans, and DeJounte is still out, old friend again. But other than that, they've been pretty healthy, but it's a back-to-back, so more uncertainty. We'll find out who's going to play for the Pelicans on Wednesday afternoon. As of right now, there's no betting line for the game because they're literally playing right now in New Orleans as I'm recording this podcast. But the Hawks should be favorites to win. Even no Trae, drama, all that. This is a game the Hawks need to win. I mean, nothing's a must-win ever in January, But if there was a game on the schedule that would be really good for the Hawks to win, it would be a home game against New Orleans. Because number one, New Orleans is not very good. Number two, the Hawks need Pelicans to lose games. It's a head-to-head. They can control. It's kind of a double win if you win, double loss if you lose. It'd be a good game for the Hawks to win. So we'll get into all of what transpired in that game after it is over on this podcast. And obviously any trade stuff that pops up between now and then. But that's a show for today. Please subscribe to Locked on Hawks, anywhere you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. If you are following the show already, I appreciate the support, but please jump on a permanent basis if you are just finding the show now during trade season. It's appreciated, and this is a 12-month, 52-week operation. There's a podcast every week of the year, and usually many, many podcasts every week of the year. So please follow the show on X/Twitter as well, at Locked on Hawks. You can follow me there, at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at the same address, at BT Rowland. And then my Patreon can also be found at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday into Wednesday. We'll see you in about 24 hours after the Hawks take on the Pelicans.